Ah, come in, weary travelers. You seem to have had a long journey. Would you all care for some irrit leaf tea? Now, it doesn't have a flavor that you would expect, but I assure you it will have you re-energized and ready to continue your journey. The great mage Ondarius once referred to it as a sculptor's tea, due to its almost clay-like, earthy taste. But anyway, tell me a bit about yourselves, travelers.
Oh, hey guys, it's me again, Natural Wizard. Welcome back to my channel. Now, some of you may know, I will be attending SoccerCon this year, which is coming up this weekend, and I intend to be doing a vlog/slideshow for you guys, but don't expect much because I've never done anything like that before, so you'll have to bear with me on that. However, I will try to make it as entertaining for you as possible. But as for today's video, we will be doing another r/entitledparents video. Now, I've got some pretty interesting stories for you guys today. So let's dig into the juicy tenderloin that is r/entitledparents. Okay, this first post is called, "Stop Sending Your Kid Over, I'm Not a Babysitter." At first I wasn't sure if this was an entitled parent story, because I think this woman is just plain crazy, but after reading a few of these, I figured out that crazy and entitled are one and the same. Years ago, this new neighbor of mine kept trying for the better part of a summer to use me as a free babysitter. It started when her kid, who was a really cute, well-behaved, about 7 years old, showed up at my door at 7:15 in the morning. We were all just waking up and getting around, so I told him that my boys weren't ready to play yet and to come back in a few hours. That is when the kid told me his mom had gone to work. This seemed a bit odd to me, so I had brought him in and tried to call his mom. This was the time of only landlines. Sure enough, she was gone. So I brought him in and fed him breakfast. He stayed with us the rest of the day and he got along well with my two boys who were about 5 and 10. I had only talked to his mom about 2 times, so I had no idea why she thought this would be a good idea. When his mom came home, I walked him over so I could talk to her. I told her not to do that again. I told her that I would be willing to watch him on occasion if asked first, but not every day. Her response was, "Well, what else do you have to do all day?" This kind of took me by surprise. I tried to tell her that I work at home on commissions. She rolled her eyes and told me that being an artist isn't a real job, and besides I was married so I didn't need to work. I should have pointed out to her that she was married and working, but I felt myself getting angry and didn't want to argue with her. "Just don't do that again," I said to her. "You have teenage kids home for this summer, have them babysit." She frowned at me and said, "They work." And I said, "So do I." Then I went home. The next morning at 7:15, the kid sheepishly shows up again. Once again, I bring him in and feed him breakfast and later lunch. Once again, I took him to his home, and once again told his mother to please not do that again. She actually tried to tell me that it was my neighborly duty to watch him, and I told her that if she sent him tomorrow, I wouldn't be there because of a doctor's appointment. She said that as a babysitter, I should have given her several days' notice about this. I angrily told her I was not a babysitter and then went home. The next morning, I made my 7 a.m. appointment. I did some grocery shopping afterward, and it was about 10 a.m. when I got home. The poor kid was waiting for me on my porch. He had been there for nearly 3 hours, and the little guy was scared and hungry. That night when I took the kid home, I was angry. I told her how the kid was scared and alone. She actually said that she had told me I hadn't given her enough time to find anyone else and that his being alone was my fault. I pointed at her and said, "I am not a babysitter, don't send him over again." That night, this woman had her adult nephew call me to scream at me for not being home when his poor aunt had dropped her son off. How dare I leave a small child alone like that? I told the nephew that his aunt knew I wasn't home, so it was her that left a child all alone. I said that I had repeatedly asked his aunt not to send the kid over anymore, and I was not a babysitter. This nephew freaked out at me when I said that, and I hung up on his screaming at me. This worked for 2 wonderful quiet days. Then right back to it. I tried everything, but this woman insisted that it was my neighborly duty to babysit and would tell me as much. Finally, I decided that to solve this problem, I would just get a job outside of my home, and that way she would have to stop. I was too much of a pacifist back then. I no longer am. I landed an interview for a position at the local library, and I was ecstatic. I told the woman to keep her son home because I had arranged for my kids to stay with their grandmother while I went to this interview. The next morning, I drove to my mother-in-law's house and took my kids inside. When I went to leave, I found this woman's kid waiting for me in my car. She had actually followed me there and put her son in my unlocked car and then zoomed off while I was dropping off my boys. My mother-in-law wasn't the most flexible person in the world, and she adamantly refused to watch an extra kid. I had to cancel my interview. I was livid. I toyed with several ideas at this moment. I could take the kid to her job and leave him with her, or I could call the police and CPS. I really wasn't sure how stable this woman's job was, and I didn't want her to get fired. And when I went to go call the CPS, I chickened out because it really wouldn't be fair to the little boy. Besides, I had heard some really scary stories about CPS. In the end, I just waited for her to come home. I left the boy at my house with my hubby, and I stomped over to her house and met her before she even got out of her car. I shouted at her. I told her she was dense, stupid, moronic, and crazy. I told her that she had lost me my job interview, and if she sent her kid over to be watched again, I was going to call CPS and the police. I told her that she was violating my space, and if it took going to court to get her to knock it off, then so be it. She then put her hand on her hip, and in her most snotty tone she said,
"Well, if you didn't want to sit with him, all you had to do was tell me."
I really don't know how I kept from punching her right then and there. This comment was so asinine, I turned on my heels to start stomping home when I saw her husband pulling up. Now this was the first time I had ever met her husband. He worked at a job that only allowed him to be home on weekends. I can't blame him, I wouldn't want to be around her either. But when she saw him, she turned tail and ran into her house. He saw that I was upset and asked me what had happened. I told him all of it, especially the incident at my mother-in-law's. The poor man was shocked. He had been told that I was being paid, and he had been giving her money to pay me. He had no idea all this had been going on, and he was very, very apologetic over the whole thing. In fact, he apologized again to my husband when he came over to pick up his little boy. Finally, she stopped sending her kid over. Later, I heard from others that she was bad-mouthing me and warning folks about what a horrid babysitter I was, but I took that as a favor. I didn't want to babysit any kids other than my own, and I still hate doing so. I don't hate kids, I love kids. It's dealing with the parents that I don't like. The kid came over only once in a while after that to play with my kids, after he called to get permission. Exactly the way it should be done. I'm sure his dad had something to do with that because the kid only came over on weekends. This is one of a few stories I have involving this crazy lady. Her only entertainment in life seems to be seeing how bizarre she can act in this neighborhood. I'm luckier than my other neighbors in the fact that she leaves me alone now, and I'm very happy with that. Lady, you cannot just be dumping your kid off at your neighbor's house expecting them to babysit him for free, especially without warning. And then there's following them and sneaking your kid into their unlocked car while they're not there. At what degree of craziness do you think that's okay? Alright, on to the next post. It is called, "Whine All You Want, Lady, I'm Not Giving Your 15-year-old Wine." Before I got into business and reporting analysis, I was a waitress for about 8 years. I have far too many stories, but this one is one of my favorites. I was working at a gastro pub as a supervisor. I had a personal alcohol license. In the UK, you have to have someone on site with one, and we have to abide by certain laws as well as the premises license, which can also dictate what we can or cannot do. Failure to do so can mean the loss of your license, the premises license, and a personal fine if you're caught. Also, you can lose your job. The issue is, these two can sometimes contradict one another. This is important later. We had a family come in one evening wanting dinner. One of the two children was 15 or 16. I sat the family down, told them the specials, and asked them what they'd like to drink. Entitled mom orders a lime and a soda. The entitled dad orders a pint of lager, and the entitled kid orders a small glass of rosé wine. We had a Challenge 25 policy in place, which meant if you looked younger than 25, we would ask you for your ID. I ID'd entitled kid, which is where this all starts. You don't need to see her ID. Unfortunately, it's our policy to ID anyone who looks younger than 25, which your daughter does. She's 16, which by law allows her to have a small glass of wine. You remember when I said about contradictions between law and license? This was one of them. By UK law, you are allowed to have a small glass of wine or a half pint of lager with a meal if you are with a parent or guardian and are 16 or 17. Most premises licenses prohibit this as it is harder to prove if you are 16 or 17 as you don't go out with ID usually. The pub I worked had this in their license, so it didn't matter if she was 16, she wouldn't be allowed it. I'm very sorry, but I still cannot give her the wine as it is prohibited in our license to sell alcohol to her. We have a great line of mocktails if she'd prefer. No. She will have the wine. No, I will not be selling her any wine as it could cost me my job, and this place could be shut down if an inspector came in and ID'd her. Not all entitled parents have to shout to be entitled. Sometimes it's the calm, not my problem attitude that makes an entitled parent what they are. That was this woman. I don't care about that, just bring her what she asked for.
I want wine. They said I could have it and I want it.
I knew where this was going. I had to stand my ground. I'm sorry, but I cannot sell you any wine. Is there anything else you'd like? Entitled mom then started complaining to her husband, exasperated that I wouldn't bring her darling girl a glass of wine. Look, it's her birthday. Is there any way you could overlook this once? His words were nice, but his tone was expectant that I'd relent. No, sorry.
Fine. Throws her hands up in exasperation. You've made me want a glass of wine now. I'll have one instead. She'll have a Coke.
Thank you. Sorry again. Just to reiterate that the wine is for you and not her. I may have to ask you to leave if she is seen drinking the wine.
Whatever.
So off I go and make the drinks. Come back and take their food order. I put it through to the kitchen and asked one of my members of staff to keep an eye on them while I went back for a quick break. I'd been on shift 12 hours at this point with no break and needed to put my feet up for a few moments. I came back from my break to see the entitled kid drinking the wine and the entitled mom drinking the Coke. I was pissed. I started walking over there. Entitled mom noticed me and tried to switch back the glasses. Hi there folks. Now, I don't want to cause a scene, but I did say when taking your drink order that entitled kid couldn't drink wine on the premises, but you indicated you understood what the consequences of that may be.
I don't remember that.
She had a sneer on her face that said, "And what are you gonna do?" If she had been decent, I would have just given them another warning. Because she was a biatch, I took another route. Whether you remember or not, I remember saying it. Unfortunately, because of this infraction of our premises license, I have the right to ask you to pay for your food and drink and leave. This is when entitled dad blew up.
No, we're not leaving. I refuse to pay. How dare you treat us like this? I demand to speak to a manager.
I am the manager tonight, so you'll have to deal with me. Please calm down, sir, as you're disturbing other guests. More and more people had begun viewing our little spectacle. None more so than the elderly gentleman and his son who were on the next table.
How dare you, young man? I've heard enough. This young lady explained your daughter could not have a glass of wine, and you defied that, putting her job and this place at risk for your own selfishness. Screw off, old man. If I want a lecture, I'd call my own dad.
Sir, if you don't calm down, I will have no choice but to have you forcibly removed by the police if necessary. This made the entitled dad balk. Entitled mom wasn't having any of it.
We are not leaving. We'll go in our own time, and you will bring us the rest of the bottle of wine as compensation for your rudeness.
I laughed at that. To think I'd do that was ridiculous and delusional to say the least. No, I'm sorry, I'm done being patient. Please pay and leave. I'll have your food packed up for you to go. I reached for the entitled kid's plate first, which is when entitled dad grabbed my wrist and squeezed until it hurt.
Don't you touch that.
A bit scared at this point, I struggled with what to say until he yelled in pain. The old man had told my employee to call the police and had struck entitled dad with his cane to get him to release my arm. His son had taken up beside him, and there was a few people shouting at them to just go. About 10 minutes later, 2 officers arrived and took my statement. The family obviously told a different story, which was proven false by the CCTV and its audio. The father was charged with endangerment of a minor. Entitled kid was actually 15, not 16. ABH, and resisting arrest. He tried to get out of the officer's grip. I think he got fines and community service. Entitled mom was cautioned and was told to pay for the food and any other costs incurred by her and her partner. I got a well-earned day off. The thing is, if they'd had a nice meal at home, it would have been fine, as it's legal to drink alcohol in a private home from age 5. I think she means 15, but I'm not sure. Entitled kid could have had a whole bottle of rosé if she wanted. Well, that's just a whole entitled family there, isn't it? You got your passive-aggressive entitled mom, your overly aggressive entitled dad, and just a snobby, bratty entitled kid. I bet they are just the life of the party at family reunions. I wonder if they act like that everywhere they go. Like when they see a sign that says no dogs allowed, are they like, "Oh, well my dog's a well-trained purebred Shih Tzu, so clearly that sign doesn't apply to us." I don't know, I just don't understand the minds of entitled people like that. But anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode of r/entitled parents. Some of these stories may be anger-inducing, however, they are entertaining. So be sure to tune back in on Friday for the next episode of r/I don't work here, lady. And hopefully you will be provided with further entertainment. Anyway, thank you so much for watching and spending some time with me. And as always, don't forget your tea before you go.